At the Wargaming table, tick, troops in contact, experimentation. Okay, so the active player acts with an activated unit. So blue 4 player activates this first team, chooses to activate just this single team. He could, of course, activate the 2 teams stacked together, but he activates the first team individually, goes up and says 0, and then he goes 1, 2, 3. So at this point, so the red 4 player is the reactive player. The reactive player reacts. Yeah, the reactive player reacts. And the reactive player may react given a trigger. So at this point, the red 4 player declares a reaction. So at this moment, the unit that just moved would have to be marked with a marked +3 action periods, because it just spent 3 action points. 1, 2, 3. It's marked +3 action periods, and it moved quickly through the woods. It moved quickly through the woods because of the number of action points it was expending per hex of wooded terrain. So it's marked with some type of, well, let's just say it's marked with a certain readiness loss like that. Then the red 4 player fires. Okay. And actually what would happen is, so red 4 player would declare, oh, okay, actually now I'm thinking that's not how I want it. Nope, back up. So players act. One player's active at any one time. The other player, the player that is not active, may interrupt the active player and become the active player given a trigger, because that then becomes that player's action. Okay, I'm going to do that. So, and there's a reason why, which I'm still going with. Yeah, we'll talk about that another time. Okay, so to back up, when a unit, well, I shouldn't say, when units, including individual unit, okay, when units act, they are done in one of 3 ways. 1, they're done because they expend all 4 action points. 2, they end because the player ends their action. Yeah, ends their action. Or 3, the opposing player interrupts. Yeah, that's it. The reason why this is important is because I think, for example, when this unit became visible here, I'm saying red 4 player is declaring interruption. The moving unit gets marked completely at the point that it was interrupted at. And the reason why this is important is that red 4 player could choose to simply move away, or they could choose to fire at the unit that at the trigger, which was observing a unit doing something. Yeah, we'll see how complicated that gets, but that is what I think I want. That is how I think I want this to go. And by the way, to carry this through, if red 4 player interrupted and then chose to fire, this unit, okay, so the whole combat would be calculated given the state of the unit right there, including the loss of readiness. Then the loss of readiness... Yeah, I think the loss of readiness would come off. The targeted unit would be forced down. And full cover. And where is it? And forced down and full cover, and then whatever the basically the combat, I don't know what to call it, if it was let's say 8 firepower or whatever, it would be marked like that. Then the fire would be marked, and by the way, the fire would be marked with the same action period marker as the target. Boom. Okay, we'll do it like that. Same period marker like that. Okay. So, to back up to the situation that actually began, well, it didn't begin, but it spurred a lot of this thinking, and I mean a lot of this thinking. Okay, let's take one, we'll take one defender, I don't know, let me set up my situation. Well, let's just put him here. I'll put him here. Here. Okay, this is what spurred a lot of this. And now let's take three opposing units. So I'm going to put the units just like that. Well, put them up. Doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. All right, 3 units in line, on line, not able to be observed at all by the defender by a complete wood line. So this is what spurred this all. This is what spurred it all. If this unit chooses to go 1, and the red 4 unit holds its fire, and then this unit goes 2, 3, and then 4. Red 4 unit held its fire. Well, actually, let's just say he's done let's say he would be done. He's marked +4 action periods. Defender fires on him, and the defender is marked also +4 action periods. Okay, that all seems fine, because what it means to me is unit started here, spent 15 seconds walking through this woods, spent another 15 seconds crossing this open ground, spent the next 15 seconds crossing this open ground, and in the next 15 seconds, as it moved forward into this area, it came under fire. And that means that, just considering these 2 units, that means that this unit sat for 45 seconds and then opened up fire as the unit was moving vicinity here, and fired for some amount of time in that last 15 seconds of a minute. Fine. Now what happens when the next unit goes 1 and 2? What happens now? Just considering this situation, the unit is already marked +4 action periods. Does that mean he can't? So the first question is, does that mean he cannot fire on here, on that unit? Now the one, I think, game for effect approach is to say that a defender in this type of case can fire at every unit. So what that means is that unit expended 2 action points to get there. This approach says, okay, he fires on him, he gets marked, let's just say +2. Man, gets marked, yikes, bad shits, okay, gets marked +2 action periods. And then again, this unit goes 1, and then are we saying he can fire him again? And then he gets marked with a simple +1 action period. I mean, that's one way to do it. The result of this is that over a minute, what actually, despite what happened with the units, what really happened is all these units were moving forward, and this unit opened up on this unit first in the first 15 seconds. In the next 15 seconds, it was opening up on that unit. Then there was a brief, let's just say there was even a brief lull. And then the last 15 seconds of the minute, you fired on that one, which is even odd considering that in the same 15-second period that this unit was firing on this one, that unit was actually in the area, right? Because we said that it traversed that ground. Anyways, this whole design for effect thing it just doesn't sit well with me. Is it, well, it's perfectly fine, I guess, for design for effect. The effect is not unsettling, I guess you could say, but I don't like how we got there. So, what is to be done? What is to be done? I'm not sure, actually, but I'm trying to work through this. So one thing I don't want, by the way, is that if there were like 10 blue 4 units here in a line, and they all advance on this one defender, what I don't want is an unrealistic, this unit can fire, by the way, at whatever rate of fire it wants on every single target. I don't like that because that exceeds the normal fire capabilities that I see for the unit in the first place. And I do not want these design for effect things that says, well, it shows players that they shouldn't do X. No, I don't want that. No, I don't want that. I want something more, I don't know, something more, I don't know, want something different. So, what was I thinking? This is, I think, an example of what I meant by I don't want these types of reaction fire mechanics put in that exceed normal capabilities. What I mean by that is if this Red 4 unit chooses to fire in these 3 hexes, perfectly fine, he can do that. And the firepower of that unit, and let's say the firepower of the unit is 12, then that unit can fire, 4, 4, and 4. I haven't decided whether the firepower has to be divided evenly or not. I'm thinking it probably will have to be divided evenly, but Red 4 unit can disperse its firepower. Let's say it has 12 firepower at some range here. The unit can disperse its firepower like that, no problem. But what happens when this unit goes 1, 2, Red 4 unit interrupts and fires, and this unit is marked with, well, I'll just keep going through this even though this may not be entirely necessary, but he goes 2, is marked +2 action periods, and then he gets dropped with, let's say, again, probably not necessary, but 12 firepower. Then the next unit goes 1, 2. And now we're saying, oh yeah, the defender gets to fire at any unit, la-di-da-di-da-di. So you see what I'm going to get at here. It's going to be 2 action period, Then this one, 2 action period, and they're all going to wind up with 12 firepower dropped on them. And this is only because it's reaction fire. That's what I mean by I don't want something that creates unrealistic capabilities, at least as per the other rules in the game. So no, that's not going to cut it. So I got to find something else. The other idea is that he goes 1, 2. He drops firepower on him. I'll just keep it easy and say 10. He's marked with +2. And then the firer would also be marked with +2, right? As per normal. And maybe now when the next unit goes 1, 2, okay, I'll continue on with my example. I keep thinking of things, but because he's at +2 action points, and because he's marked as +2 action point, he cannot fire at him in this phase. As a matter of fact, no, I'll keep going. So let's say he goes 3. Maybe now, especially since 3 is after 2, doesn't it make sense that the firer could shift its fire? So let's just say that's +3. And by the way, how much fire? No, he could drop the full fire. So let's say he drops. Let's say he drops 10. That's okay. And then this shifts to a +3, right? Because he just fired in the third, like that. Now what happens when he goes 1? Now, so here's the thing. Can he not fire now? Because he's already marked with +3, and this one's way back at 1. Now let's say, at this point, when you're just looking at this unit marked with +3 AP, action period, you don't know from here whether he actually fired in the first period or not, which is why I was thinking maybe, I know it's going to look bad. So he's marked with 2 when he fired at this unit, right? When he fires at this one in 3, you add the 3 marker. And when he moves 1 and you declare, I want to fire at him, you drop 10. You drop 10. Drop 10, boom. This is, let's say, I don't even have a handy counter. Okay, let's just say 1, boom. He's marked +1 AP, and maybe he's added a +1 like that. Right, 1, 2, 3. Oh, actually you would want to go in reverse order like that. So you go 3, 2, 1, boom, like that. Maybe that works. Now what that means is when these units, when they all moved here, the unit chose to fire here. And then when this unit moved here and this unit moved here, he chose to fire here. And finally, when this unit moved here, he chose to fire here. That's okay. I think it's okay. And by the way, the whole point of this, let me show you the point, which I didn't even have ability to show. If there's a 4th unit here, now this unit moves 1. There's a 4th enemy. And for that matter, let's just add a 5th enemy, like that. What I didn't want, again, to reiterate, I didn't want when this 4th enemy moves here, I didn't want this unit to be able to fire again. This 5th enemy moves here, get to fire again. No. There's got to be, basically I want there to be an ability to overwhelm a defender is what it comes down to. I want there to be an ability to overwhelm a defender by pure numbers. And this might do it. Okay. So now, by the way, he goes 1. He can't fire at him because he's marked with 1. He goes 2. He can't fire because he's already marked with 2. And then 3, he can't fire. 2. Then, let's just say presumably he goes in there and whatever, assaults, right? But that's okay because 4-1, just in raw numbers, right, was able to overwhelm the defender, but still took a lot of casualties in the process, presumably. You'd roll for all these, obviously, but presumably you potentially took a lot of casualties, but 2, you took potentially an amount of casualties relative to the actual firepower capabilities of the unit without exaggerating them, without exaggerating the capabilities of the defender. And what you would do is each action period as you go, right, when you go to the first action period or the next action period plus 1 action periods, it would come off, but the unit would still not be free. And then the next one, right, they would each come off. And somebody might say, and even I look and I say, this is a lot of counters, but I'm thinking that this case, well, let's just say you have a unit that amasses, like all 4 of the next 4 action periods like that. Yeah, it looks like a lot, but I don't think that case right there is going to happen very often, where you're going to have basically this is a human wave tactic. And on the one hand, I do not want to preclude this, which this does not preclude that. And on the other hand, I don't want it that common. Okay. Yeah. That might actually work. That might actually work good enough.